when I'm in my 40s, 50s, and 60s, so Emilia and I, we hike. We've hiked 6 mountains. We love hiking. We're big fans of that. But we play soccer. We play basketball. We weight train together. We've exercised genuinely every day for over 2.5 years now, which is wild to say. That's when I found self-improvement. After that car accident, it's very clear now. Prior to the car accident, I was achievement-oriented and I was improvement-oriented and I was intelligent. However, I was not self-improvement oriented. It wasn't personal growth. It wasn't inner work.
What was it, or one thing, a number of things, which actually led you to decide to go internally focus then? Because it could have been something else. What was it about you at that point after that particular event that meant you were starting to look internally?
And so you have to find people that are very, very, very humble, and they check their ego and they constantly check themselves, and they're always trying to climb a higher mountain. Whereas success really goes to people's heads, because once you track metrics and habits and start to win and succeed and build momentum, and you get to a new level. And if you can't keep a level head at that new level, you immediately will sabotage.
Hello, and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Alan Lazaros has joined me in the studio today. Alan, welcome.
First of all, I just want to start with gratitude. I always do, because I started listening to podcasts 9 years ago. About to be 10 years ago. I'm going to be 36 in November. So 10 years ago, I was 26 years old. I got in a life-changing car accident, and I started listening to podcasts and all things self-improvement since then. And so now I'm on the other end of a microphone helping people really improve their life in a more positive direction, which is what other podcasters did for me back then. So I'm very grateful to be here. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you coming, because obviously I understand your story and I think other people should hear it as well. So thanks for being on. Now, in terms of when we start this podcast, we always like our audience to really just get to know you as who you are right now. We're going to go into the past and your journey, but who you are right now, what it is you stand for, what your focus is, and a little bit about you outside of your professional life.
Okay. So talking now.
Yeah.
Talking now. Okay, interesting. Usually we go to past first. Now
Yeah.
first. So I'm the CEO of a company called Next Level University. It's a company that is we have 3 podcasts. We have Next Level University, we have Podcast Growth University, and we have Business Growth University that I'm about to start. Next Level University has 1,850 episodes, and it's all about reaching your potential. Health, wealth, life, and love, holistic self-improvement in your pocket every day from anywhere. Completely free. But ultimately, it's a company too. It's not just a podcast. And as pitchy as that might have sounded, really, I'm the CEO, and we have a 19-person team, and we have all kinds of different departments. We do monthly meetups every week. We have a book club. And so the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my life up to this point, this is Confessions of a Successful Leader. I am becoming, I believe, a successful leader, but I'll tell you what, the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, growing a 19-person global team, as arbitrary as that might sound to some of the bigger company owners out there, it's been a lot of hard knocks. It's been a lot of challenges, and I've made so many freaking mistakes. However, I've learned from every single one of them, and I'm going to be 36 in November, and the Alan version 3.6 is going to be a way more effective leader than the Alan version 3.5. So, being CEO is not easy, because it's all on you in a lot of ways. However, it's also been the most meaningful work I've ever done.
Looking forward to digging into that later. And what I want to understand is, and every guest does this on the show, is when I ask that question, and we do talk about the present now, is they tend to forget, what it is they do when they're not working. Now, I know it's very hard when you're building a business, but we still need to have that. We need to have that space. You know this more than self-development stuff. So when you're not working, how do you recharge? How do you refresh? What is it? What's your happy place?
Fitness. I know it's probably bodybuilding, fitness, athletics. I would say athlete. I would identify as an athlete. I joke and I say I want to be a freak athlete. So when I'm in my 40s, 50s, and 60s, so Emilia and I, we hike. We've hiked 6 mountains. We love hiking. We're big fans of that. But we play soccer. We play basketball. We weight train together. we've exercised genuinely every day for over 2.5 years now, which is wild to say. And I actually stopped saying that after 2 years because it just started to sound braggy. But ultimately, I love exercise. I'm obsessed with fitness, and I just don't want to hide it. So yeah, fitness is what I do for fun.
Excellent. Well, I want to really dig into these 35 years and 11 months. And so let's take you way back. What I always find is any individual that goes from being a preneur in terms of whatever they're doing in life to become an entrepreneur, there are usually stages along the way, and it starts in our first system of family and education and moving forward. So take us way back to then. So we're talking when now, 90s, are we? I guess we're talking around then. About the child. And tell us about 88. So tell us about that family system as you were growing up in the 90s and what it was like for you.
Okay, so the first thing to understand too, this is Confessions of a Successful Leader. So I'm actually going to start with the 3 things that were huge advantages, because I think what I've come to understand, I've rewatched the movie of my own life over and over and over and over again. I started doing therapy in my 30s quite a bit. And I think coaching is more about the future and success and achievement. And I think therapy is more about learning yourself and learning your past and understanding how the inner workings happen. And so I became very, very clear in comparison in my 30s about how I work and my past. And so I didn't understand any of this at the time. But the first thing to say that I want to make very clear, I'm going to start with strengths, is I had 3 huge advantages, and honestly, only 3. And that's been interesting to realize, because I look like a silver spooner quite a bit. I have awards in my background. You know, I'm a white Caucasian American male, reasonably good looking, blah, blah, blah. And so these are the 3 advantages that I had. I was born in a country that is the largest economy in the world by far, and that has come with advantages. The second advantage, I was born in Massachusetts, and I still live in Massachusetts now, actually. The second advantage I had, and this one I never used to share because I was too much of a coward, quite frankly, but I've always felt very gifted intellectually. So straight A's through all of high school. Didn't feel like I had to try that hard, to be completely honest. The obnoxious kid in engineering school who could party all night and not go to class and still get straight A's on all the calc exams. So there's that. And then the third one, and this is the most important one, is my country, Massachusetts in particular. I got a ton of financial aid and scholarships to go to one of the best engineering schools in the world. It's called Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and it's like a mini MIT in Massachusetts. And so those are the 3 huge advantages that I had. And I just want to be upfront about that, because as I've created a global podcast, I have clients all over the world, and I realize coaching so many different people, some people really do have some serious disadvantages based on where they're born. Okay, that said, now that was the confession on the strengths. I also believed in myself a ton, so that's another one. But now, having done therapy in my 30s and realizing the truth of my childhood, is those are the only strengths. I mean, there was nothing else even remotely good. And I want to make this clear too. My childhood had some good things in it. There were some good things, but most of it was a lot of adversity. And you and I talked in the pre-call about that. So when I was 2 years old, my father, my birth father, so my real last name is actually McCorkle. It's John McCorkle was my father. And he passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old, when I was 2 years old. And I didn't even start talking about that until my mid-20s. I kind of avoided it. But so he was part of a big Irish Catholic family. It was Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. 6 siblings, all J. And I had an older sister who was 6. I was almost 3, 2.5. And my mom was 31. She was a stay-at-home mom. And that's when my stepdad came into the picture. And my birth father was the primary breadwinner, so my mom was stay-at-home mom. So stepfather comes into the picture, Steve Lazaros. And from 3 to 14 years old, I playfully refer to this part of my life as boats and BS. And in the 90s, globally, but also in the US in particular, it was just money. Everybody had money in the 90s. My stepfather worked for a company called AGFA, and they did hospital computers, and this was during the dot-com bubble. And for those of you who remember the 90s, I mean, particularly in the US, but it felt like everyone had money all the time. It was just wild. Economic boom times for sure. If you look at the stock market during those times, it was wild. And so boats and BS. It was party hardy. We had a yacht, we had boats, we had snowmobiles, we had a motorcycle, trucks. My mom drove a BMW. We lived on a small lake, big pond, and my stepdad did, well, but my mom and stepdad did not get along very well, and that's a very polite way to put it on a public medium. And we weren't really associating with McCorkles anymore because we were trying to sort of be the Lazaroses. And 14 was the hardest year of my life by far. And again, didn't know this at the time, but now it's very clear. So stepfather leaves, takes his entire extended family with him. To this day, I haven't seen a single one of them since. I have spoken to my stepdad a little bit on Facebook Messenger. That same year, my sister moves out with her older boyfriend, and we still don't associate much with the McCorkles because we're trying to be the Lazaruses. My mom gets in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, her sister, and my Aunt Sandy ostracizes us from her side of the family that same year. So I'm basically a freshman in high school, just leaving middle school, and this is all happening. And to this day, I've only seen 2 humans from my mom's side of the family. One of them is my cousin Jeff, and my second cousin Dan is his child, which will make sense in a second because he was in the car when I got in that accident at 26. So I'm 14 years old. People are telling me these are the best years of your life, and I'm going, God, I hope not, because this is awful. And so now I realize in hindsight, there's 4 trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So fawn was my big one. I just appease. I became this sort of social coward, and I just wanted to fit in because I think fear of abandonment. I didn't want to lose anyone else. However, behind the scenes, I remember thinking, okay, no dad, no trust fund, there's no family wealth, there's no one's going to save me. And I remember thinking to myself, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And I kind of became the man of the house, so to speak, at 14, at least in my consciousness. And so I just aimed super high. So my trauma response was fawn socially, but behind the scenes when no one was watching, it was fight. It was aim higher, work harder, get smarter, baby. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Aim higher, work harder, get smarter. And I've been running that cycle my whole life. And so I got straight A's through all of high school because my dream was to go to WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute I told you about. It was $50,000 a year. And so when my stepdad left, he got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog. We went from Xbox, Dreamcast, ski trips to, I don't even know how I'm going to go to college because we can't afford it even if I do get in. Free lunch at school because our income is so low. I'm shopping at thrift stores. Again, we're not going to starve. My mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. We're definitely not going to starve, and I need to make that clear. But it was no more abundance. That was over. That was done. So I bootstrapped through high school. I got straight A's. I got all the scholarships and financial aid I could possibly get, and I got into school, and I went for computer engineering. I got my master's in business, and now I'm 21st century, post 2008, 2009, economy's coming back strong. And I just got my master's in business, and I'm a computer engineer in the 21st century. So I went from a broke high school and college student used to going without to all of a sudden I'm getting jobs left and right. iRobots, Sensata Technologies, Lens Americas, what used to be Texas Instruments, which is now actually Sensata Technologies, Tyco Safety Products, Simplex Grinnell. I lived in LA for a time. I had an interview at SpaceX. It was a time where I was very sought after, and I went from 65 a year to 85, from 85 to 105, from 105 to 125, 125 to 180, all in this course of a couple of years. This is wild. And my narrative to myself was wealth is the answer, because when my stepdad left, not having wealth was the problem. Sort of saved my family, so to speak. And so I paid off 84 grand worth of a debt in a single year back in 2014, which is 10 years ago, which is wild. More than 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I had $150,000 in a Vanguard account. I remember I bought all these tech companies that I knew, quote unquote, knew would win. I bought a bunch of Cognex, which is the company I landed at eventually, and then index funds and that kind of thing. And I lived with my girlfriend, Courtney, at the time. My rent was $500 a month. We lived on a lake. We split the rent. I drove a 2004 Volkswagen Passat for $5 grand cash. I didn't need nice things. In hindsight, this is so obvious. At the time, I didn't get it. I didn't really need nice stuff because I never had nice stuff since I was 14. So it was like, whatever. I just banked all my money. I'll just be super wealthy. Then I get in my car accident. So I'm 26 at the time. High school friends, college friends, corporate friends. The part of the story I haven't shared yet is mom and dad liked to party. And I definitely adopted that without knowing it. Partied a lot in high school, partied a lot in college. And then I was a sales engineer, so I partied in corporate as well. And Cognex's motto, it's an industrial automation company. They do machine vision globally. the most successful machine vision company in the world, actually. And their motto is work hard, play hard. And I used to say work hard, play harder. And little did I know I was drowning stuff from my past that I didn't realize I drank too much and too often. So I'm 26 years old, and I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. We're playing Call of Duty, second cousin from my mom's side that I had mentioned. And we're not partying, we're not drinking. And I was going to TGI Fridays, and I look down at the GPS. I look up, and I see the brightest lights I'd ever seen 10 feet from me. I thought was a Mack truck. Dark winter night, the yield sign was covered by the snowbanks. It was a really bad winter in New Hampshire. I end up on the wrong side of the road, my fault, and I had that mortality moment, which was there's no chance we survive this. This is it. That's the end. And so head-on collision happens. Two things saved my life. One, thank you, Volkswagen. The Volkswagen Passat, I used to call it the tank. It was such a heavy-set steel trap of a car. German-engineered car. It was awesome. So thank you, Volkswagen. Totally saved my life. If I was in some little Honda Civic or something, there's no way I'd be here. Second thing, it wasn't a Mack truck. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck. Big lift-kitted pickup truck. The front end completely smashed in. I mean, this is no fender bender, head-on collision. But the frame stayed, and the airbags deployed. And so he hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face in the airbag. And we're definitely rattled. But physically, we're okay. No permanent damage. My little cousin, second cousin, 17 years old, he's tweeting about it, still sort of invincible. I'm completely messed up. Like, this is just full existential quarter life crisis, Phoenix burned down, rise anew from the ashes type of thing. And all the humble pie, all the regret. What was my life about? What was the point? Would my dad be proud of me? Am I proud of me? All of it flooded me. And so there was definitely post-traumatic growth after that. There was definitely PTSD as well. Double yellow line scared me. I was claustrophobic. I had to work through some stuff. I kept getting pulled over because I was too far on the right side of the road because I was avoiding the double yellow lines. And the police were very kind to me because I just said, I got in a bad car accident recently. I'm sorry. But that's when I found self-improvement. After that car accident, it's very clear now. Prior to the car accident, I was achievement-oriented and I was improvement-oriented and I was intelligent. However, I was not self-improvement-oriented. It wasn't personal growth. It wasn't inner work. And so I was externally successful, but not internally fulfilled. And I flipped the script after that. I went all in on self-improvement. And I think that's kind of an understatement at this point. Every book I could get my hands on, every speech, every course, I just went all in. Fitness, happy, healthy, productive, fitness competitor, fitness model, fitness coach, start my own company, speaker. And I went broke. So I went from externally successful and internally unfulfilled to internally fulfilled and externally unsuccessful. I liquidated all my assets. I went broke. I went past zero. And there's something called the 227 rule. And it's 2 years when you start your own company, 2 years to go in debt, 2 years to get out of debt, and then 7 years to actually be successful. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, nope, not me. And that's exactly what happened. So here I am now, honestly, in my 30s. I'm about to be 36. I can say now, I can authentically look in the mirror and say I am both successful and fulfilled. And I want my life to be, my future to be an amplified version of what it already is. And it's a mountain that gets higher as you climb it. But ultimately, I think that's the hero's journey we all go through. And eventually, hopefully, you can get to the place where you are both externally successful and internally fulfilled, because it turns out being internally fulfilled but not being able to sustain it because you're not externally successful also kind of sucks. Although it is much better than being successful and unfulfilled internally.
So, thank you. And I just want to pause, if I may, there. And what I'm curious about, I'm sure the audience is curious about, because we might assume this rather than really hear it from you, but you had the car accident. Obviously, you had the trauma after that. What was it, or one thing, a number of things, which actually led you to decide to go internally focus then? Because it could have been something else. You know, what was it about you at that point after that particular event that meant you were starting to look internally?
You know, there was two things that, in hindsight, it's fascinating. You know, I almost die in a car accident, and I'm filled with regret. And then I find a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. It's by a woman named Bronnie Ware. I actually have a bunch of flashcards here that I always carry in my pocket. They're all nasty and tattered at this point because they're from way back. But The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, I have this flashcard that I always carry with me. And it's just, so I've actually since interviewed her, which was really cool. But her name's Bronnie Ware. She worked in hospice for 8 years, and she worked with the terminally ill. and she thought her job was to take care of them. Her real job, her calling, I guess she would say, is to listen. And they all had the same regrets. I wish. And the number one regret of the dying is I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. And then one of the other regrets, the third one, I believe, is I wish I had the courage to express my true feelings. And I wasn't doing either of those. Pre-26, I was still trying to fit in and not stand out. I was partying too much. I wasn't fulfilled. And so that was one of them. The second one was I saw Tony Robbins' TED Talk for the first time called Why We Do What We Do. And regardless of what you think of Tony, the TED Talk's world class. And it was the right time with the right book, with the right TED Talk, where I just realized, okay, this is what I was missing. Because when you're in massive pain, you're looking for solutions and you're humbled. And I was so humbled that I was just looking for anything I could to make sure that I lived a meaningful life. And those two resources really got me to realize, particularly Tony's TED Talk, why did I do what I did? Why was I drinking too much and too often? Why did I surround myself with so many friends? Why was I everyone's best friend? Why was I everything for other people and nothing for myself? Why did I become this weird super achiever who believes in himself so much and always has these big goals and dreams, even though most people don't? And why am I trying to hang on to these friends while also trying to achieve these dreams? And that just doesn't work. And so just what I realized is that my childhood had no self-improvement in it whatsoever. And I've really looked. I'm wildly disappointed. I am. And saying that publicly is scary, but I'm wildly disappointed in how little self-improvement and leading by example there was in my childhood, particularly from I've always been kind of looking for a male role model. I've had a lot of heroes, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and and honestly, in some ways, I think I've kind of become the hero I always wish that I had, the male role model I always wish I had. But I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in how few people actually lead by example, particularly in my childhood. And because I'm disappointed in that, I decided to lead by example after 26 and to always be more behind the scenes, and who I am when no one's watching is what always will matter most to me.
I love that. Thank you. And that takes us nicely into the last 10 years. And you were talking about building a business that you've been doing, and obviously the podcast and the whole business behind that and the difference that you're making. And we're in the same industry. And I'm really fascinated about the challenges you face. You've built that, because it's all very well having an idea and having a passion and having a reason for being in life, but actually making it happen through other people is easier said than done. So just talk to us about that journey and the challenges that you said earlier that you've been facing as you build that.
Well, one thing, so this is Confessions of a Successful Leader. So to me, one thing that's become very evident is the lead by example thing is the most important, because I think unconsciously, most leadership is unconscious. So let me give an example that actually makes that land. So Emilia and I, 2.5 years ago, 955 days ago, I went to Emilia, my beautiful girlfriend, future wife, and I said, I want to beat my old record. She said, what do you mean? I said, I want, my old best is 4 months in a row of consistent exercise without missing a day. I want to beat that. She's like, okay, I'll do it with you. Awesome. We get past 4 months and I say, now what? She said, well, let's go for a year. Okay, awesome. 30 minutes a day, every day. Walking the dog counts, football counts, basketball counts, swimming counts, running, jogging, weight training, all of it counts. You have to move your body for 30 minutes a day intentionally. It can't be, oh, I went to the mall today and that counts. It has to be intentional. And so we get past 4 months and we go to the year. And then I remember driving into the garage. I said, we did it. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, we just left the gym. I said, we hit a year. This is a year, 365 days. She's like, oh, awesome. And I swear, I said, now what? And she said, let's do this for the rest of our life. And I had a mini panic attack. Seriously, because I know what that means. And I'm not someone who says I'm going to do something and then doesn't eventually do it. I remember I joked about running a marathon way back, and I talked about it, and I eventually did it. I did it. It was horrible, but I did it. And I have consistently exercised, and now we're 2.5 years in. But my point of this, what does this have to do with leadership? You know what's wild? I have a 19-person team, and I coach most of them, the core team, and we have a bunch of people on the team who are doing streaks. One of them has 750 plus days running a mile a day. He calls it Miles for Mindset. Shout out to Brandon. And my team member, Amy, she has 2 years now, something like that, 2-year streak. And she never exercised consistently before that. And there's several others. One of my team members, Lizzie, she's actually not a team member now as of recently. She went her separate ways, but it was amicable. And she did yoga every day for multiple years. And I had this realization. I said, if I wasn't aware enough to realize that Emilia and I starting that streak is why those things are happening. Leadership is so subtle, and it's so hard to understand the value of leading by example because it's hard to connect the dots of what's happening. Here's another example. I track habits. I've been tracking habits for 9 years, coming up on 10. I track metrics and habits. If you want to know my coaching in a nutshell, tell me your goal. I'll tell you the metrics and habits you need to achieve it, and then we'll work on your identity because ultimately that's the issue. Okay, that's it. That's my coaching in a nutshell. Nothing else. We dial that in over and over and over and over again until you become the version of you that's earned the result that you want. And I track metrics and habits every day for the last 9 years. Guess what? My whole team does too. We're all habit trackers. Guess what? Every client tracks metrics and habits. So if I wasn't doing it, there's no way I would have 50 plus people tracking metrics and habits. There's no way. And so I think that's what I would say. Leading by example is an unconscious trigger for other people that they makes them want to do it too, because they see your results, they see your self-worth and self-belief, they see you keeping the promises you make to yourself, and they want to be a part of it. And everyone wants to jump on a moving train. And I think that real leaders are people who take the initiative and take the responsibility in advance for that bigger, better, brighter future, and then have the grit and tenacity and courage to really stick with it even when they don't want to do it. Because the truth is, I don't want to do it every day. I definitely don't. That's a load of crap. And but I do it because it's worth it.
So let's build on that, and I really appreciate that, and I agree with you. I think self-leadership is absolutely, too many leaders come into roles, particularly if they're not growing something, but they're actually inheriting something, and the first thing they do is phone the headhunter and say, CFO is not fit for purpose, sales director can't grow the business, and they never look at themselves in terms of why they're the problem, because they just recruit another CFO and sales director and they get the same results, right? So I agree with you totally. But let's talk about the last few years of you building this, because 19 is, a number of people, which isn't easy to lead to begin with in terms of setting the scene. So what problems have you faced, even though you've had this approach of the self-leadership and role modeling?
Yeah, the problems that I've had is differing beliefs. So we call it core aspirations, core values, core beliefs. So alignment is a byproduct of core aspirations, core values, core beliefs. So core aspirations are about the future. These are your goals. Core values are how you show up in the present. And core beliefs are usually from your past. And if your core beliefs, core aspirations, and core values are in alignment, I would rather say that in order. Core beliefs are about the past, core values are the present, and then the future is core aspirations. So if all of those are in alignment in yourself, you're going to naturally attract other people with those same core beliefs and core values and core aspirations. And so what has been a challenge, I think, the biggest challenge I can give you right now, I have a filter that I created to make sure that I never bring on anyone in my life who is these things. I call it my unmeds-eye score. It took me 35 years to create. And essentially I think leadership is more about keeping the wrong people away from you than it is about attracting the right people. And the wrong people, as much as I want, and I love people, I do. I always have, to a freaking detriment, to be completely honest. However, I realized over much pain and suffering and failure that if you have the wrong people around you, you just can't succeed. You just can't. And so stop telling yourself a story that you can. This is going to be hard even with the right people. So just get the wrong people off the bus. So here's how I did it, and I'll share it with you. So it's called the unmeds-eye score, and I have it written in the corner of my office on a whiteboard. It's anyone who is unstable, naive, manipulative, entitled, delusional, significance-driven. You know, those people with a birthday month. There's an expiration date on having a birthday month, by the way. Arrogant and immature. So really, if I could boil that all down into one word, it's a lack of gratitude and humility. It's 2 words: a lack of gratitude and humility. To me, humility is the most important character trait in building a team, because people who don't have humility think they're great when they're not, and you can't really build on that, because the truth is the iPhone 1 is garbage compared to the iPhone 14. It's not even close, even though it was a revolutionary breakthrough. And what you find is people who don't have inner humility, they think they're awesome once they start winning, which is immediately how you start losing. And so you have to find people that are very, very, very humble, and they check their ego, and they constantly check themselves, and they're always trying to climb a higher mountain. Whereas success really goes to people's heads, because once you track metrics and habits and start to win and succeed and build momentum, and you get to a new level. And if you can't keep a level head at that new level, you immediately will sabotage. And so for me, entitlement, this whole 4-hour work week, and I want massive rewards for minimal effort, like you're just not going to like me. I haven't taken a day off in 10 years. I never intend on it. Now, it doesn't mean I work all day every day, but on Sunday we're going to the lake. It's my girlfriend's birthday. We're going to enjoy ourselves, but I'm going to work every day. And on Sunday, I'll probably work for 2 or 3 hours. And that's what it takes to be a responsible business owner. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to do that. That's what it requires for my goals. But if you come into our culture and you don't want to earn it, you're just not going to fit in. And you're certainly not going to like me. And I'm just going to be a pain in your butt. And so that's the unmeds-I score. I can go through it again if you want. But ultimately, anyone who has a high unmeds-I score, so here's my rule. I rate from 0 to 10, unstable, naive, manipulative, entitled. 0 to 10 on each of them. I average them and divide by 8. I'm an engineer. And if you have an 8 unmeds-I score, I keep you at a level 8 distance.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And I used to be in recruitment. I'm not proud of that necessarily, but I know that it's never easy necessarily to assess these things, because some people are really good at actually
world class.
Absolutely. So
world class manipulators.
Absolutely. So how do you make sure the filter is true in that sense? Because some people are really good, even though you can tell them, look, you're not going to like it here. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I think it's like playing poker. You eventually learn when people are bluffing, but it's usually there's tells. So in poker, when someone's pretending to have pocket aces, but they actually have pocket twos, there are certain tells, and everyone has a tell. I've come to learn there are certain tells about each of these. So for example, significance driven. When someone makes a really big deal about their own birthday, that's a tell. When someone is really, really, really upset when you're only 1 minute late, even though you're super busy and they know your calendar, they're kind of entitled to your time a little bit. Now, there's a big difference between, of course, you got to hold standards. Like if I'm 15 minutes late, you got to call me out. I get it, right? But you can tell when people are entitled. You can tell when people don't have work ethic. You can tell when it's all smoke and mirrors. You can tell when they here's one that I do. I have a client, his name's Cole, huge fan, 24 years old, just crushing it. Love this guy. Humble as hell, hardworking as hell. If anything, he's more than he thinks. Love it. I do this thing with clients probably every quarter, and I ask, okay, where were you at the beginning of the quarter versus where are you now, 0 to 10, blah, blah, blah. And when I asked Cole, because he's so humble, and this is a spectrum, he's like level 10 humble, that's why I'm using him as an example. I said, Cole, where were you when we first started coaching? And he said, oh man, 2. I said, okay, where are you now if 10 is your dream life? He said, probably 6. I said, okay, what do you think's made the difference? Let's double down on what's made the difference. And I knew when I asked, I was going to be at the top of the list. I knew he was going to say your coaching, the metrics and habits, the consistency and discipline. I knew he was going to know the truth about what actually built this. I'm 36. I spent the last 12 years failing forward to give it to him at 24. I was a mess at 24, right? And I knew I would be at the top of the list. There are certain clients in the past, I don't coach people like this anymore. They wouldn't even put me on the list. It's in their mind, the coaching had nothing to do with it. Yeah. Which, by the way, I used to be okay with, because if you're a great leader, you don't need the credit, right? Turns out you need the credibility, because they'll convince themselves that you had nothing to do with it. They'll convince themselves and get delusional. You'll feed their delusion, and then they'll go and try to do things. And then when they go fail without you, they'll actually hate you. They'll actually dislike you. When in reality, it just got to their head. It wasn't actually them. You don't know the true value of someone or something until you take them out of the equation. And a lot of people aren't doing that. If you're humble, you're constantly taking, okay, what would my life be like? Oh, wow, Emilia, oh my goodness. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten a therapist. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have learned half the things I told you today. A lot of these frameworks I learned from her. If I forget that and I start deluding myself into thinking I'm the one, I'll start mistreating her. I'll start taking her for granted. And the moment you start taking people for granted that are making it happen is the moment you get entitled. And the moment you get entitled, I'm telling you, there's someone at your back waiting to beat you. If you are entitled, it won't be close if you're my competition, because I'm going to wake up every day and earn it. And you're going to think that you can, I don't really have to prospect today. And I don't really need to track my metrics. And I don't need to work out. I don't need, okay, over time, good luck. Right. And in sports, we get this because the best athletes are the best athletes that some of these people that you study, like a Tom Brady, for example, he's the first one in the locker room, the last one to leave, even though he's already the best. People think, well, he's the best. Why doesn't he take a day off? He's the best because he doesn't take a day off. Right. So you got to get the causation and correlation accurate. So ultimately, that's how you tell is you have to learn these tells. And you have to try to identify inward humility, because a lot of people are good at faking humility. I outwardly seem arrogant, and I finally figured out why. Because if I have level 10 self-belief and only level 8 humility, I'm going to look level 2 arrogant. But most people are pretending to be humble when inwardly they're actually arrogant. You need to catch these people reading. You need to catch them working. Right? Who is someone when no one's watching? You have to ask yourself that question and trust your intuition, because you do know.
Get it. So we're coming towards the end of our time. I've loved our time together, but I have one question which is really, really important, because you're coming into your 37th birthday. And therefore, for me, I want to understand, what's the future for you? What's your dream? How are you going to leave this planet whenever you do, in terms of the difference that you've made? Share that with us.
Thank you again. I want to end with gratitude too, because I really appreciate you having me and allowing me to express and share. I feel very grateful that I'm able to share these things, because I really do wish that I had known a lot of this. As for my life, I have it written on my whiteboard as well. Big on whiteboards, obviously. You are here to reach your own unique potential and help others do the same. Everything else is secondary. That is my calling. I don't know. Did I choose it? Did it choose me? If you are out there and you want to know what your calling is, you got to look at what bothers you. There's nothing that bothers me more in myself and others when we squander our potential. I'm just as mad at me. Trust me. I'm barely scraping my potential. But me pre-26, I was so upset with myself because I didn't leave it all on the court. I didn't give it my all. I was resting on my talent. Yeah, I was super smart. Congratulations, right? There's no nobility in resting on natural talent. You are capable of more, and the whole world suffers when you settle for less. And so to me, that's my calling. That's what I'm doing. My whole company is built around how to reach your holistic potential. And that's what the future is an amplified version of what I'm already doing.
Alan, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I know everyone listening to this, watching this, will take their own little nuggets away that relates to them, and particularly the way that you've changed your life around in that sense. So again, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.